What is going on, everybody? And thanks again for joining us here on Expanded Perspectives with me, Cam Hale. And as always, this time I have a new co-host. Kyle has gone, and now I have Ned Flanders joining me.
How's it, Oakley Dokley? How you diddly doing out there? Yeah, I'm here, man. It's a new year, new me.
Dude, I like it. I'm a big fan.
No one in my family likes it. They all hate it. And I told them, look, all I did basically was cut the goatee off.
Just
That's
trim
all I did.
that up.
I mean, they act like I did something horrendous, but the great thing about getting a bad haircut is you only got to wait a couple days and then it's right back to where it was.
It grows
right?
back out. Dude, I like it. Keep it.
I think it's pretty cool.
I dig it.
You know?
I got all the gray.
I can't grow a beard, so that's why I never do that.
Dude, I dig the mustache. I'm glad you did it. You remind me of, no joke, what did we talk about? It's Coach Kent Murphy.
Oh, from the YouTube baseball videos?
Yeah.
Those are hilarious.
He just hit dingers.
Yeah. I know this is the first show of the new year.
Oh, yeah.
2021. Yep. Thank God 2020's over. We did do a show for the elite members recently, but for everyone that's not an elite member, I hope you all had a great Christmas. I hope everybody had a good New Year. I did. Cam, what'd you do for your Christmas?
We had just the fam over, just my son and his lady, Jessica, and they came over. And my daughter and my mother got to come down because everyone knows it's my mother-in-law's still in the rehab facility.
How's all that going?
She's doing a lot better. The medication's working a lot better. She's really focusing. It seems to be helping. Now, when I say a lot better, you have to realize you're starting at zero. Just knock it out. It's fine. You're starting at zero. So anywhere up from there is always good. But yeah, we had a great Christmas. I said we were busy, but it felt like as busy as you can be without really going all out. Like, you remember Christmas used to be you would go to somebody's house and everybody, and you're just bouncing and running. And of course, with all this COVID and everything the way it's going, we don't have that anymore. And we were busy in different ways. And to be honest, I don't miss the bouncing from house to house as much as I thought I would.
When the kids were real little, it was a real beating.
Yeah.
But luckily, one of my aunts, so every other year we would have Christmas Eve either at my mother's house or my aunt's house. And my aunt lived all the way in Fort Worth. So that's about 27 miles from here. But she recently moved to Weatherford about 2 years ago. So now everybody's in Weatherford. So my mom literally lives like 6 miles from me. Mm-hmm. My aunt lives like 6 miles the other direction. So I don't have to travel very far. And then Christmas Day, my wife's folks came over. We cooked a ribeye, loin, stand-up roast, and kids opened gifts. And it was pretty low-key.
Worked out pretty good. Yeah.
And then for New Year's Eve, we stayed home. It snowed New Year's Eve, and we pretty much didn't do anything.
Yeah, that was pretty wild, wasn't it? I knew it was going to get like icy or what, but I wasn't expecting the snow to come in like it did. I was shocked, for real.
Yeah, the meteorologists are always like, well, it could be, but that's the way it always is, so you never really know.
Yeah, there's always a could be. Well, hope everybody had a great time together. Now, like we had said on the Elite Show, we lost a good friend of ours that Kyle and I had grown up with.
That's right.
And we've known Billy since junior high, 6th grade, somewhere around in there, 6th grade, 7th grade.
Yeah.
And dude, he was great. Billy was a hilarious. He was one of those naturally funny people 24/7 all the time. And he got COVID, and it ended up killing him in like 5 days,
Man.
4 or 5 days.
It was
it took him.
From the Facebook post, it was very similar to what I had.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking the whole time. Is I'm like, it's almost verbatim of what you went down.
Yeah, where it was like some kind of pneumonia, they thought, and then it turned out to be COVID and went downhill. Luckily, I mean, this is the first show of the year, so this episode we're kind of do a wrap up of what took place. All through 2020. But
some of our favorite stuff from 2020. My favorite stuff of 2020, the first favorite thing that I want to get into real quick took place in literally just a handful of days when we went to Arizona.
Yeah, which
that was only before you died.
That was basically pretty much, it was today.
Yeah, today's when we left.
Didn't we go? We left on January 3rd.
I believe so, yep.
2020. I think it was today, actually. So 1 year ago today is when we went to Arizona, and it was like 2 weeks after that I got the COVID.
Yeah, you came home with the sickness.
Yeah. And speaking of that area in Arizona, the first episode we did in 2020 was about the Mogollon Monster.
And look, we know we're mispronouncing it. I know it's not pronounced Mogollon. It's
not?
No, it's not.
No.
But I'm not going to change. It's going to continue to be Mogollon.
And that's because of the rim right there, right? The Mogollon rim.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole rim area.
For those
that we actually walked down.
Yeah, we were up there.
We were on it, yeah.
There's actually a couple sightings in that Indian reservation that was bordering where we were hunting.
We were about 3 miles from it.
Right.
As the crow flies.
Right. And if you're not familiar with the Mogollon Monster, this is kind of like a Sasquatch type creature, it's described. I think the first sighting happened back in 1903 when a guy named I.W. Stevens told the local newspaper that he saw a man, get this, Cam.
A man.
With long white hair and a matted beard that reached his knees.
That's a hell of a beard.
Right. He says the man claims he wore no clothing. Upon his talon-like fingers were claws at least 2 inches long. It said that he had a coat of gray hair nearly covering his entire body, and there was a few patches of dirty skin showing. Right? I like the description.
I do too.
Mr. Stevens went on to describe the creature's face, which he called a horror show. He said it looked like it was seared and burned brown by the sun, and it had fiery green eyes. Now, according to Stevens, he reportedly that he tried to charge towards the beast in an effort to scare it off. And this thing, get this, Cam, was carrying a large club.
Oh, so we're talking primitive man more than we're talking like a Bigfoot or Sasquatch.
That's what he says. But, there have been sightings or descriptions, of Bigfoot as not being ape-like, but being more like man-like. Mm-hmm. So there was lots of sightings that continued to happen, especially by Native Americans in the area. Like I mentioned earlier, that White Mountain Apache Nation in Arizona. There was a sighting there, even as recent as 2006.
Really? Mm-hmm. Say, and do they go into any description, or did they just?
One of the local reports said one of the tribal police officers, he's a lieutenant named Ray Burnett, he stated that there's been a couple of times they've seen this creature looking through people's windows, which is also very common when we hear about Sasquatch stories. He said that when the witnesses call in, they all sound like they're really scared. These are not people that are just calling out of the blue that are hallucinating or were drunk or were making up hoaxes. He says he knows the people that live on the reservation. It's a small town area. So everybody at the police station is familiar with the people. So they know that they're not pulling their leg. It'd be kind of like...
Very small town.
Kind of like this town when we grew up. Like you kind of knew just about everybody, right?
Yeah, we did. Because we went to school either with them or with one of their family members. So you kind of knew, every family that was here. So you would kind of know they were some troublemakers.
Sure. Or you would know if somebody was,
fibbing.
Yeah. And it's, according to this lieutenant, they're on that Indian reservation, the White Mountain Apache Nation. The people he knows that have made these claims to have seen this Mogollon monster were not making it up.
So they're not one known to be one to fabricate things.
Right. And there's been lots of sightings over the years. I think there was a group of Boy Scouts that were at a Boy Scout campground.
Yeah,
and
I remember hearing something about this.
They saw one like that. I saw, I think there was like a bicycle or maybe a marathon race or something out in the desert or that area. And people saw something moving across the field.
Could you imagine while you were like out doing one of those Bigfoot 200 runs, which may be one of the reasons I named it? No. But could you imagine running and seeing, like you're just booking it and they're like, there's a caveman. You're like, because I'm sure at first you would think it was a homeless person. I mean, even if you were out there, you'd be like, is that a homeless guy?
What's more incredible to me is to believe that I was running in a 200-mile Bigfoot race.
Well, I didn't say he's going to finish it. Maybe you only ran 1.5 miles and was like, yeah, that's all. That way you could say you ran in one, but you didn't finish.
That's true.
You didn't even have to start. You could be like 20 miles past the starting point.
I definitely would be running if I saw a large creature like that with a beard down to its knees carrying a club.
A club. I like the idea of the guy that's like, I'm going to run at it. Like, bro, this ain't a black bear. Like, I don't know what you're planning on scaring off. I don't even think it works with bear.
Well, I think it's because
Not all the time.
I think he thought that it was a man or something like that. There was even a story. I'm just now remembering this as I'm telling it.
You ever had that mistake happen to you?
What?
People in the wild ever think you were a man?
No.
Well, they will now with that mustache.
Yeah, hopefully.
It looks like you hadn't finished eating the horse. Go on.
I don't know if this is the Mogollon Monster or another Bigfoot story from another nearby state, but I want to say that there was a legend where, I'm trying to remember how it goes. These Civil War soldiers or something were captured and they were held captive by Sasquatch or something, and then they escaped, but they lived in the wild for so long that they weren't quite like normal men anymore. They were somewhere in between, like a Bigfoot and a man. I mean,
I don't know, but I like where this is going.
Not physically, but like, like imagine, like, what was the girl that grew up with the wolves? The Discovery Channel, Anna or whatever. She would bark and stuff. Apparently, the wolves took care of her, nursed her.
And that's what these Civil War guys were raised by Bigfoot?
Something like that. Or they were left stranded there. And they degressed. And then when people would see sightings, it wasn't actually this Mogollon Monster. It was actually these men, these wild men who became feral, I guess. I don't know. It's a crazy story, right?
Well, what's funny is, and now that you touch on that, is why do we give that credit as such to even people like we've done, talked about the hermits, the different hermits all through the United States and around the world. And we've talked about these men to where people start viewing them as not real people. They disassociate themselves from it to where I guess it's easier to treat them badly. Because when you would see the hermit, they act like the same way. Like, this guy's living off the land, when we all used to live that way in tribes. I mean, it's the way it always was. And now we look down upon that. Like they're saying those men are savages or they're like cavemen. Yeah. You're like, were they really? Or did they just leave the war and decided we're not going back to that life again? We'd rather just live out here.
I think that's human beings. I mean, they look down, like they looked down on the Native Americans in this country for a long time. They were like second-rate citizens, unfortunately. Look at even today in major cities, the people look down on homeless people. Step over them, like, get a job, you loser, not really knowing that person's background or circumstance.
And
I'm
really
sure they're
and
not
truly,
choosing to live that way.
Aside from, of course, you being hot or cold, summer or winter, if you can find a good medium, is it real bad to be homeless?
No, there was well, I'm not talking about homeless, but there was a documentary.
You're like, this might not be so awful. Like, you don't have any responsibilities?
No. I saw a documentary
Sounds
where
pretty good.
This guy lived out in the middle of the wilds of like Siberia or something. I can't remember the guy's name. And he once was worked at a major city, had a good job and everything. He just didn't want to do it anymore. He lives out there like a hermit in a small cabin the size of this studio.
Wow.
Cuts his own wood, does everything, and it's like something about being happy, and he is a happy individual. Yeah, his life is harder.
Oh, the documentary Happy People is one thing, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
His life is much harder, but his life is much simpler. And he's living the way...
It was on Vice, wasn't it?
Maybe. That human beings have lived literally for 200,000 years. Yeah. So, there's arguments to be said. Is working 9 to 5 in a cubicle surrounded by fluorescent lights, computers, saving and spending, trying to keep up with the Joneses, buying a bigger house. That's not what we're meant to do, right?
No.
Like you always think about, we've talked about it before in the show, like living in a village in the woods, and the men would go hunting and the women would be child raising and grinding corn or whatever, tending to the crops.
Hunting and gathering.
I'm not trying to be a sexist here, but I'm saying you look at it as like, man, that would be really hard, but maybe not. Not if you had a job to do and it's your job to weave baskets. It's my job to, plant rice. And everybody has their job. You do it. I'm sure there's downtime. You sit down, you're having your snack with the boys, or you're out hunting, or you're out fishing. I mean, there's a lot of I know for me, if I was out every day, like just hunting and fishing pretty much every day, sounds pretty good. I mean, say you went in the morning.
You had your camp set up.
Checked your snares and traps on the way to the river.
Yeah.
If they caught a rabbit or two, you threw them in your sack or your basket that you wove.
Yep.
You go catch a couple fish, and by 10 o'clock, you're like, we're done for the day. We got it.
Let's knock off.
Right. Yeah, you tell the other girls, hey, look, man, the fishing was tough. Took us all day to catch these. And really, you guys were just horse-assing around in the woods, right? You always think about it being bad, but maybe it wasn't.
And that's what I said. If you can get past the weather, then you're good.
Well, and say you lived in a place so the weather wasn't too bad.
Yeah, would be okay. Like if you're going to be homeless and want to be a homeless fisherman, live in Florida. It might not be too bad at all. I
never have understood why there are homeless people like in Boston, New York, Montreal. Chicago. I mean, like, dude, go south.
You do know that there's a certain thing that's called direction, right? You can go south. The further you get, or the closer you get to the equator, the warmer it gets. You don't have to worry about
be
cold.
Homeless anywhere.
Works pretty simple.
Be homeless where it's warm.
I have to bring up something that we had talked about on the Elite Show. I want to talk about with y'all because I can't stop thinking about it. And what that is all the UFO stuff that's going on right now, that's being released, all the things that they've talked about. and it's still not making massive news. Now, like we've said on the Elite Show, of course, the Post is covering it. A few other places is covering, but why is it not more national news that there are, or that our government is completely agreeing with all the UFO stuff, but now there's a timeline of 180 days where they have to get their stuff together to release things that they have found. Then this happens right here from the Post, folks. January 2nd, this was released. Multiple witnesses spot a UFO over Hawaiian island of Oahu.
Yeah. I saw that.
How wild is this? This is Paula Froelich writes, a Harvard professor says aliens visited us in 2017 and warns that more are coming. But a bunch of Hawaiians say that they're already here. Says that multiple people witnessed and filmed a bright blue glowing oblong, unidentified flying object hovering above the skies of Oahu last Tuesday before it, listen to this, performed a nosedive, y'all, into the ocean. And then they had decided, people's like, we got to call the FAA. They start calling 911, start calling FAA. All of this happens, but it was about 8:30 in the evening, and there are videos that you can see that will show this thing. And then you and I have been talking off camera, off just a bunch, about the number of UFOs and unidentified things that are now coming to the surface, video-wise, reported-wise, that are traveling in and out of our ocean on a regular basis.
I was going to say, what's the common denominator in all these sightings that are coming forward now? Is they're all coming out of the ocean.
Yep.
What have we always said? Not us, but people in general, that is there's a place to hide. What's a better place than the ocean?
There's not one. There's not. I mean, there's more ocean than land. Why wouldn't you hide in the ocean?
And let me ask you this. Maybe they haven't just recently arrived. Perhaps they've always been here.
That seems to be the way.
Like maybe they've been here for thousands of years.
It seems to be like that's the way it's going. Like that's what we're seeing.
But why now? Why is there so much about it coming out now? I mean, like a lot of the sightings, whether you're talking about the Tic Tac, the gimbal video and stuff, these are coming out recently, a year or two ago, but they were actually filmed, more than a decade ago. So why is the government...
They just now kind of acknowledging it?
It seems like they're acknowledging it a lot more. I mean, just in the last 12 months, there's been numerous instances where the government has said, yeah, we don't know what these things are. And then they've recently admitted to that they never stopped Project Blue Book. They just renamed it. They've never stopped looking into it.
They've never stopped it. They've just kind of done a better job hiding it.
Right. So this has been ongoing. So, and like you said, and we've mentioned before, it's like, this should be a bigger deal.
Yes. I think it should be a huge thing.
You've always wondered since you started, having thought of like, are we alone in the universe? You remember the old movies when you were a kid, you would watch The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Yeah.
And they would always have those, the narrator talking about, are we alone? It's a big question. And now the governments are saying, no, we're not alone.
Well, and it also feels like we've been programmed to think of them as evil and bad, like you and I have discussed. Every movie that you see, not every, but like less than 1% is they're friendly and helpful and everything's cool. Yeah. Paul. I mean, there's funny ones and all, but most of them are like Independence Day, right? That's the way it is. They've come down here to do something, to take something. What was it? What was the other one? Oblivion. Wasn't that the one with Tom Cruise where, it's him and one other. They're left here on the planet and it's dealing, but it turns out it's all alien. You see all these things. You're talking about.
Yeah. I was thinking of
like
the
he's
one
cloned, I believe,
where they're talking to him and it's like foggy. What was that? The Arrival?
Oh, yeah.
Or something like that.
And what's the one? Is the Arrival the other one where their legs bend backwards? That's with Charlie Sheen, right? We always talk about that.
What is it? Hold on. I have it
There's
on
another,
iTunes.
But I think about those type of encounters, and I wonder if there was a lot more put into that thought in order for it to kind of discredit if anything happens. But I don't understand, like you said, I don't understand why it's not a bigger deal and why they're coming forward now, unless there is a time clock we don't know about where the aliens are maybe there's more coming.
One. Do you remember this movie?
Yeah, that's Arrival. Not The Arrival, but Arrival. Yeah.
The other one, The Arrival, is the one with Charlie Sheen.
With Charlie Sheen, yeah. And then Arrival, they just, drop. But it feels like to me, and of course, the way we all know the way 2020 went and the way the memes and jokes are flying, it does feel like it. Would anybody be surprised if they started landing? Because I made a joke to my wife, and have made it a few times, that what this world needs is a common enemy.
That's what Ronald Reagan said.
And it needs to be either a common enemy or a common friend. We need to find common ground. Well, nothing brings a group together like a little battle, right? And like everybody groups up. So if we were to be attacked, I mean, like we're spitballing, who knows? Maybe they're going to come out. Maybe we don't know. Maybe they just want to help. Maybe they've waited this long, or maybe nothing happens. And the only reason they're coming forward with it now is because the ease that we have of people noticing it. Is that now there's more and more people
because of social media, there's more and more cameras. I mean, everybody has a video camera in their pocket.
Yeah.
Or that wasn't a thing. Remember back in the day, you'd have to buy the big camcorders?
Mm-hmm.
And your parents, had to be somewhat wealthy to even purchase something like that. Yes. Nowadays, everybody has a phone, even kids.
Yep.
So maybe there's just, the intensity isn't ramping up. There's just more ability to capture it.
That seems like what we had discussed, that we thought ufology, we'd always laughed about it. It seemed the greatest stories had already passed.
Yeah.
There was nothing really big coming. And it's also, we have to say that because you don't find out about them till much after the happening. It's almost like you've got to put that distance, that if one of these crazy sightings happened right now, let's say the Betty and Barney Hill thing happened right now, nobody would pay it any mind. You would just consider them liars. Everybody would just be like, well, these people are obviously faking it or hoaxing it or something along those lines.
Right.
But then you put 30, 40 years on it and people keep looking back. It seems to be more believable. People are more apt to, like us and like y'all, are more apt to give into the story and to listen to the story. And I was always under the impression maybe that's what it was. But now, after all of this stuff that's happened and all the things that have come out, you have to go back and re-examine every one of those stories, not with a grain of salt, or a grain of sand. You have to really break it down and be like, look, this stuff, now you have to assume that every one of them were telling the truth. And instead of like, well, none of them are telling the truth. Now you have to assume that they all were.
And one of the interesting parts of the Betty and Barney Hill abduction,
this is what I was waiting for you to bring up. I know where you're going.
Is the fact that through hypnotic regression and all that stuff, they talked about people being on the UFO, like military guys in military suits. So that brings to question, everybody's heard of these crazy conspiracies where the government and the aliens are working together.
Yes.
I don't know if I can buy
Maybe
that,
that's the reason they brought it up. Maybe they're telling everybody now because they've had a split. The business is now broke. You had one faction. Now it's broken into two factions.
They had a treaty with the aliens that's about to expire, kind of like when Hong Kong expired.
Yes.
And the British had to give it up.
And we talked about with Space Force. They bring up Space Force.
Yeah.
Because there is a galactic federation of alien or whatever. And we've just, like I said before, we're just now being invited. Because we're like the redneck cousins that they don't want to invite to the family reunion because we get drunk, break things, and start fights and all that. We're not advanced enough to be part of the Turtle Club.
Yeah, but I mean, there is a big question. Like, should we be more concerned? Are these things dangerous? What are they doing here? Are they simply observing? I mean, obviously they are at least somewhat frightened or intimidated. Otherwise, they would just show up in your yard. They would have no fear. They know that there's nothing we could do to them. Yeah. But they're being clandestine. They're being secretive. Well, the only reason you do that,
maybe this is the Nat Geo group that's just filming us the whole time and they're sending us back. We live in like an unscripted road rules party or whatever the heck I'm trying to think of. One of those
road rules party?
Yeah, like one of those MTV shows is what we live in. Like just completely unscripted madness is and they just live streaming it back to a planet.
There's no such thing as a reality show that's unscripted. They make it look like that.
But this, what
we
live
like that
in,
when all of a sudden you're like somebody's coming into the shop and they're like, hey, how's it going? I'm like, well, the camera crew had to come in before them because that's who's capturing them coming in.
Walked behind them.
I used to have those arguments with my wife all the time. But okay, along with this line of thought with the UFOs. So what do you think about, I don't know why I just thought of this, crop circles?
Dude, I thought about this 2 weeks ago.
Did you really? Because I remember being a kid, the first time I ever even saw one was on the cover of like a Led Zeppelin album. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And then I started looking into it. And back then, I thought this is definitely extraterrestrial. And then at some point, they had some guy who showed how he did it with a board and rope.
Yeah.
And then I was like, man, they must be just all hoaxes. But then I started seeing some that were really elaborate.
The scientific studies of how they were heated and bent. You're like, wait a second.
With the acknowledgement of these crafts that no one knows what they are, I'm starting to lean more towards, I believe, crop circles. Not all of them, obviously. There's some that are hoax, but I think a lot of them are probably legit. They're everywhere. They're from India.
When I was a kid, I thought they were only in the UK.
And that's not true.
Yeah, but when I was a kid, that's what I thought. When you first got it, because everybody always had the British accent, and that's the way and they were like, okay, that's it. They're all in the UK. We never have to, because we don't see a lot of them here.
No, I don't think there is very many here for whatever reason. I think about that every time I'm driving, like through Kansas.
I don't think they have anything to do with UFOs.
You don't?
No, I don't think they do at all.
Well, there are people that talk about it being fae.
Or orbs. It may be unidentified like an orb or an energy, but it's not a craft. I don't think it has anything like a craft comes and hovers and then takes off or whatever it does. Those are being built by something that is extremely intelligent and extremely advanced. A craft that doesn't leave a footprint like that, I don't give a damn how you design it. It's never going to leave like a tire tread. You're not just going to smash a tire, pick it up and leave. Everything's broken underneath it. You're talking about heat. They're talking about a lot of things that take place.
So what do you think?
At a fine line. I think it's a way of them trying to interact with us.
Or do you think it's like different gangs, rival gangs will tag buildings with a graffiti?
That's a great point.
Maybe it's another alien.
Maybe they're looking for Blarcy.
And they're trying to tell us, hey, don't talk to the dudes under the water.
Maybe so, yeah. Or maybe it is, like we said, fae. That's why it's mainly in the UK. There's a lot of fae stuff going on, and that's where it's at. I don't know. Maybe it has to do with ley lines. There's a lot of different ways of people that are things that people have looked at into it. I just don't believe it has anything to do with alien or ufology. The reason I say that is this. I think it's beneath them. If you have the ability to travel light years and to plunge into the water at high speeds and then travel at excess of 300 knots while underwater at unbelievable depths with a craft that's twice the size of a football field, and then just blast out of the water, hover, and then shoot 60,000 foot in a matter of a second, bending grass just seems to pretty much be a waste of time. It's kind of like what we talked about with the joke of basket weaving. Yeah, you could learn to weave baskets now. There's people that do it. But it doesn't seem to be a real booming business in every town that you go into. It's kind of beneath them. And that's why I say I don't think it's made with that sort of... Now, it may be them sending the orbs out, like I said, and doing things like that. I just don't believe it's built the way, at least I thought the way it was built with craft, or the way people had said they had seen. And there was video of like the formation of one. And it wasn't real, of course, it was hoax, but you remember it was there and it just looked like the grass had laid down. It was like a little white orb and it flew off, things like that. I just think it's one of those deals, like you said, if you wanted to see somebody and let's say you were doing a study on the pygmies in the Congo,
okay,
you wouldn't sneak in there and then start doing stuff in the trees and weaving limbs and doing that and then sneak back out. And you wouldn't do that for 60 years before you decided to go, oh, hey, by the way, it's this guy. I just want to say hi.
I wouldn't, but I don't know. What is an
epic troll? This is just a UFO troll.
Yeah, maybe mantis beings have an incredible sense of humor.
Speaking of mantis, I got a story for you.
Are trolling or reptilians or spider beings or whatever else they go by. I don't know. What also is fearful is if they are in the water, under the water, watching us, civilization, they're well aware of COVID, which would give them an excellent idea on how to get rid of us.
Yeah, maybe they released it.
Maybe they did. Maybe the Wuhan, whereas Chinese scientists working alongside.
It's definitely aliens. Not Wu-Tang.
No.
Because Wu-Tang's for the children.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of mantis beings, so our homie Lon has got this up. This came from...
Another sighting?
Yes, get a load of this. Fillmore, New York home. All right, I want you to listen to this stuff. It says, this is in response to your recent post about a mantis-like entity. Now, this just happened. He just posted this. The person says that this this incident occurred on June 22nd of 2018, a little before 12 a.m. in Fillmore, New York. I was in the shed to use Wi-Fi from my phone because the kids were on devices and the dogs are loud in the house. I like that. Got to have your getaway. While I was watching from inside the shed, I noticed something an hour after I was in there, and I heard movement of something shuffling in the tall grass. I thought it was a deer until my cat started growling and staring at the shed door. When I scanned the tree line and bushes with my big LED light, I thought I saw a head pop up into the dark.
Oh, boy.
And all I could think about was science.
That's what I'm thinking of. In the corn?
Yes.
That's exactly what I was thinking of.
Shit. I pretended I didn't see it.
I do that a lot.
Uh-huh. And I said, I spotted my light to the left and I heard it quickly get closer. So swinging it around, I flashed the light back fast and it was very close. Now about 30 foot in front of me. We stared at each other for what seemed like forever.
What was he staring at?
Listen, but I don't know. It was probably only 20 seconds or so. I was so scared I couldn't move. Also, it didn't move as I watched it. I noticed its limbs and features while we stared at each other. It was greenish gray with very big mantis eyes. The skin was smooth and had broad shoulders. And as you followed it down, it got skinny. The eyebrow ridge stuck out with a wide head and an upward slant. Its eyes reflected green. They were light green flecks that shone yellow and orange from my light, and it was over 6 feet tall. I suddenly got the feeling that it was going to grab me, so I slammed the shed door and turned and ran into the house. When I got in, I told my husband what I had seen. I noticed that a whole hour passed because it was now a few minutes after 1 a.m.
I could imagine that. If my wife came running in and described seeing that, there's no chance of me going out there to find out what it was.
Well, this husband steps up. He says, my husband came out with me and his gun, but it was gone. Says, I was really scared after that. I will not be out at night anymore. I always feel like I'm being watched. I started to look into UFOs and abductions, but I'd never read up on any of this before my experience and now believe I was also abducted, but that I have no memory of it. So again, there's missing time. They're seeing this odd thing and boom. Then you come back in, it's almost an hour later. Of course, the woman doesn't go into, when she got out there, what she was doing in the shed, how long was she in the shed before the sound, happened. Like, everybody gets lost. You get on your phone, you get watching stuff, you lose, track of times, but still 30 foot away to see a mantis being. But here's what I like the way she describes it.
Yeah.
It's got the mantis head, not a body, the mantis head, which sounds like a 6 foot tall gray alien.
Sounds like. Aren't the aliens in Independence Day? They kind of have like a mantis shape to them.
Yes. Well, they got that. Yeah, they got that head that's got that big head piece that comes up.
Yeah, like
and
a
they
stingray.
open that up, and they're inside of it. Remember that thing? They're not really in.
Oh, is that? For some reason I thought that was like in my Men in Black.
Remember they cut that thing open, and that's when it grabs the thing by the neck.
Yeah, right. It's in like an ectoskeleton suit, right? Flight suit.
Tell Ned Flanders to die. Just like something crazy. Remember he's got him pressed up against the glass?
I don't remember what it's. Oh, and it's got its thing wrapped around his neck. Yeah,
and he's making it talk. That's when the old boy pulls out his pistol and goes to work on it.
Man,
that's the guy that killed Ben Stiller in what was that?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you do. Come on, help me out. He was in Firefly. He was in, or not actually the movie Firefly.
What's Firefly?
Never mind.
Firefox with Clint Eastwood. I've seen that.
Yeah, that's a good one too. That's
the Jet.
Good one. Yeah.
No, wait.
We're going to twist off on a tangent. Here we go. What's up?
It was really good when I saw it as a kid.
It don't hold up.
When you watch it now, the CGI, or not the CGI, the special effects are terrible.
Because the cars today have better things in them than in that plane.
I mean, Clint Eastwood has come out with some bangers. Firefox, not one of them.
We're just going to go middle of the road for Clint Eastwood.
Moving on, let's talk about some of the other episodes we did during 2020. One of my favorites has to be, let me think here, when we had Dave Flora.
Yes, the Borrego Triangle.
About the Borrego Triangle and the documentary they were trying to crowdfund, which they did.
Got it done.
And only because of COVID-19 did they not to do any of the filming.
Yep.
So I think they're going to try again in 2021, but it may be 2022 before that happens because, things are still locked down.
Yeah, we don't know. Yeah, we don't know where it's going to go. Hopefully they get out there this summer. If they go out this summer, we're going out.
Yes,
so whenever they go, we go. So we're going to go out and spend a week or so out there messing around.
That's why I'm excited about it. It's one of those places on the planet that you don't hear that much. Like everybody talks about the Bermuda Triangle, but the Borrego Triangle has a lot of weird stuff on it, from mystery lights like the Marfa lights or Brown Mountain lights to
they see
ghosts,
everything out there,
like a woman in a white dress. And I mean,
glad you brought that up. Keep talking. I got something I got to tell these good people. Keep talking.
Okay, so the woman in the white dress, which leads me to another episode we did with Joshua Cutchin and Timothy Renner, when they were talking about their new Sasquatch book. And remember the crazy coincidence where people would see like a lady in white shortly before a Sasquatch is seen, or shortly after, like all these other strange phenomenon around Bigfoot sightings, not just a guy was in the woods hunting and saw a Bigfoot, or a person
Yes.
was driving down a lonely country road and saw a Bigfoot cross the road. Like there's all these other things. And some of it is like folklorish. Some of it has to do with like the fae folk. Like there's all these other things that tie into Bigfoot sightings that I really wasn't aware of or really thought about.
Yes.
Other than your just typical sighting. So that was an interesting episode as well. What are you pulling up here?
Oh, when you brought up the whole Borrego Triangle, then you brought in with the other triangle here we got. I don't remember if you remember seeing this. This just happened where the Coast Guard suspended a whole search for a ship that had left Bimini in the Bahamas carrying 20 people, a 29-foot Mako, and they've all vanished. And they believe they vanished in the Bermuda Triangle.
No, I have not seen this. When did this happen?
Happened. Like 3 or 4 days ago.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. You can pull it up, folks. Y'all can check it out and look at the whole deal. But yeah, with that whole thing, I remember seeing and keeping up with this whole deal, like, oh, a boat went missing. I'm like, that's weird. But I thought it was kind of right off the coast of Florida. I didn't realize that they were coming up there. So as I follow along with it, then somebody had written in, they believe it had gone missing into the Bermuda Triangle. But what's funny is they're leaving a lot of that Bermuda Triangle talk out of most major publications, because I'm sure they don't want it to get spinning out of control crazy.
Right.
And it also may not really be in the Bermuda Triangle. We're not 100% sure. At least the stuff that I've seen isn't, that I can't find.
It may not be a mystery. I mean,
they just can't find it.
Look, the ocean's a big place and people do have accidents.
And 29-foot ship doesn't sound big enough to be out in the ocean. That's just my opinion.
No, my dad had like a 27-foot bass boat. I would not want to be in the ocean in that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I didn't want to be in the ocean at the time in the kayak, but yeah, I thought that was weird. Is that we got another Bermuda Triangle missing thing? I wonder how many go missing. I've often wondered this from other countries that are that we don't ever hear about. It never makes our news.
Oh, a ton.
You know what I mean? In that area, same area. I'm always like, well, I wonder what that's all about.
I think a lot of people go missing in the sea.
Oh yeah,
more than you would think.
Yeah,
I mean, look how many people go missing just in the woods.
Yeah,
and then you got to ramp that up if you're in a boat.
Yeah,
that's why, like I've talked about it before on this show. There's some crazy videos on YouTube of guys sailing all the way across the Pacific Ocean in like a 15-foot boat.
Dude, it gives me panic attacks, and I don't get panic. I watch them, and I get like the one you told me to watch where the guy jumps off the boat.
Did you watch it?
Yes, and I can't hardly stand it when the boat's going, and he's just holding on by a rope.
Yeah.
Playing around. I'm like, bro, you lose the rope. Dude, it's over.
It's it.
It's over. And as long as you're hanging behind it, you're just a top water plug.
What's wrong
with
and he even says in there that it takes like 2 weeks to get to Hawaii or wherever he's going. Yeah. What's wrong with 2 weeks without a shower?
You're there by yourself, right?
I mean, people did that all the time back in the day.
You could get you some wipies and take a little hooey bath while you're on there.
Dude, I ain't worried about bathing. I am not getting in monster soup.
You know me.
On by a rope.
You know me. I wouldn't bathe.
No.
I'd shower before I got on. I'd shower when I got off. But the whole time I'm on there, you don't want to be around me.
What's wrong with just getting like a pail of water and pouring it on you while you're on the boat? You don't have to get into it.
That's true. That's very true. That's a good point.
I mean, they make camping showers.
This is true.
Do you go just jump in a lake every time? No.
Who, me? No. No.
Right?
Not doing that. Dude, I'm telling you, I can't handle that stuff. I can't handle it.
Another
one of my favorites that I want to touch on was the Cooper Vortex.
Oh, that's one of my all-time favorite stories of all time.
No.
Not just that episode, but like the story of D.B. Cooper. And what's crazy is we had that episode about D.B. Cooper, and then like literally like 2 months later, HBO came out with a documentary on it.
How funny is that? I watched about half of it. And then the reason that I didn't continue with it is because I'm like, I know these lines, right? Like I know what's going on. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed the Cooper Vortex.
What was his name? Darren?
Believe so.
I don't remember his name, but yeah, excellent. I mean, I'm fascinated by this story for so many reasons. One, it's like he pulled the one over on the man, right?
Oh,
like the FBI were not able to solve.
No, never.
And then all the crazy lines, like, so many people are convinced it was their dad or their uncle, and I just think that's really weird, right? Like, why would you?
That's what I'm trying to find.
Why would you just be so certain? Oh yeah, it was definitely my uncle, or it was definitely my dad because he liked to go out in the woods and he did something mysterious one time. But then you start getting into the stories. And it was like the money that washed up on the shore that was found by the boy, like in the 80s. And they did studies on if the money landed in the river, would it be able to drift to that bank? And they've showed that would not happen.
Yes.
And even one part of where that money was found, that part of the river had been dredged.
Yep.
And if that would have happened, the money wouldn't have been that close to the surface or something like that. Like there's all these different stories.
It almost feels like that money was planted to be found.
It does seem that.
And I don't mean at the time it was stolen. No. I mean years, like 20 years later, somebody went out there and went, this will throw them off for a whirl.
Right. I agree with you 100%. And that's what makes it such a mystery. And that's why it's like one of my favorite stories.
What I love about it, too, is the fact that it wasn't an astronomical amount of money. It wasn't an obscene amount that he asked for.
It's almost like he knew how much they would have on hand.
Well, and how hard are you really going to look for a couple $100,000 30 years later?
I like the part of the story where he wanted them to lower the rear or aft stairs.
Yes.
The pilots didn't think you could do that and still be able to fly the plane. The pilots contacted the tower.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know. They had to get in contact with Boeing, and the engineers at Boeing said, yeah, you can do it. We tested it. How would D.B. Cooper know that?
Unless he worked there. Or
he
had done it in the military. He had time and practice doing that exact
he
same
thing. He definitely had experience with something like that. Definitely. But just because of knowing how to skydive and all that.
But also how cool he was. Everybody remarked about how laid back, like he had no nervousness about getting caught because he knew he wouldn't get caught.
Drinking bourbon, smoking cigarettes. No, that is one of the other theories, is that it was an inside job. That like somebody in the FBI did it.
Yeah. It almost seems that way. I don't know if they were in the FBI, but you also have to have a great deal of patience and of like just self-control. If you'd stolen that money, made a clean getaway, put that stuff in a box somewhere, put it in your closet, and went back to work the next day like nothing happened. And you stayed like that for 15, 20 years.
And then there was a lot of botched evidence that was lost, like the cigarette butts and stuff are lost. Now, how could you lose that?
Because somebody else on the inside's helping you.
You know what I mean? It's just like one of those mysteries.
It will never be solved.
It's too far gone.
It's too far gone. They will never, there's too many stories, there's too many threads, there's too many tales of people saying deathbed confessions of I did that or he did that, but there's a lot of deathbed confessions that have happened, 8 or 9, that have like, it was me, and they give all the stuff why, and you're like, man, so if one of those 9 were really him, then we've got 8 liars that can tell a very believing story.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. The whole Cooper Vortex thing is one of those deals that I secretly still kind of like, all right, what's the latest theory of who could have done it?
Right. Another one of my favorite episodes we did was the interview we did with Pat.
Elkins Creek.
Yes. This is the story of the guy who was a sheriff's deputy in a small rural town in Georgia. And these elderly couple would call the police station saying there's someone, walking around beating on the side of their house or trailer they lived in.
Yep.
And of course, he responded to the call more than once, 2 or 3 times. And then finally the woman was like yelling at her husband to tell him the truth. And the old man was like, well, it's not really a person. He was like, what?
But I love the fact that the wife had to encourage him to like, look, quit jerking him around. Tell him what's going on.
Yeah.
Because he knew like the cops are going to think I'm crazy.
Right. He knew.
And the wife's like, but you got to just at least tell them.
And then he was like, it's not a person. And what do you mean it's not a person?
Like, dude, it's not.
And then come to find out, he went looking in Elkins Creek and found the footprints, made some casts. It's a crazy story. I like it because the arc of the story, like here's a cop, doesn't believe in Bigfoot and any of this, nonsense. And then throughout time, over time, is 100% convinced that's what it was.
Yeah. We always talk about whenever you talk to someone, you can really tell how serious they are. Like you can tell if it's sincere or you can smell the BS whenever. And we've talked to some people, several, that will tell us stories and you'll hear it and you're like, yeah, it's a joke.
Absolutely.
They're making it up and they've told it enough times that they've started to kind of believe it, but you can still, you have a feeling. You're like, this person is trying to lead me on. They're trying to give vague enough things where I fill in the gaps because they want me to fill in the story. It's the oldest trick in the book. Police use it all the time. It's very simple to lead somebody on in a story. We have to do it in interviews. When you interview people, you don't lead them where you want. You just keep the ball rolling. You help roll the wheel. With Pat, it was never that way. When we talked to him off air, before and after the show, and he was telling us things, he is one of, if not the most genuine human being that I've ever had the privilege of chatting with. And he will tell you how he felt about it.
Yeah. And,
and like it was unnerving for him to find those tracks.
I don't think he had ever been on a show before.
No, I don't believe so.
He, he wasn't really pushing to sell his book very hard.
No.
I mean, like the guy's clearly
just telling his story.
He's clearly not in it for the money.
Yeah.
He's not one of these guys that goes around and does lectures at this big circuit all over the U.S. Goes
and makes it his job. That's not his job.
Trying to get on TV.
Yeah.
Trying to sell books. You could write multiple books.
And we've interviewed all of our buddies do that. And that's what we were expecting.
Right.
But when you get Pat, I know what dude, it just seems
you know what I'm saying?
more
It's just
real.
like, this is like a normal guy from a rural town in Georgia who's.
And the biggest difference was this. He's not a researcher and an investigator. This happened to him. So that's what made, to me, for the biggest thing was the biggest difference, is this is his story that he's telling. And I think that's what I appreciated the most about it. And then, like we said, just how down to earth he was when he told it.
Yeah, that was an excellent interview. And it's a great book. I suggest you go back, re-listen to that, and pick up that book, man. Moving on, another episode I really enjoyed is when we had Nick Redfern on, and we didn't have anything planned, so we just started hitting them with questions on the fly. He said he really enjoyed it because it was different than what he's used to doing.
Yeah.
When he gets interviewed. Most people want to interview him about his upcoming book, which is literally every other month.
That ain't no joke.
But so that was a good episode. And also the Knowles family UFO counter that happened in Australia. This was where the mother and her 3 kids were driving across, what was it, the Nullarbor Plain or something, and something picked their car up. Now, people have come forward and reached out to us and told us how that was a Army helicopter and things like that. I don't know about any of that, but I do think that that's a really cool story. And speaking of cool stories, we had a listener call in recently with a possible alien abduction or time slip. Why don't we check that out?
All right, let's listen.
Yes, hello. My name is Luke Vandervoort. This story happened in the way back in the 1970s, probably late 1970s. At the time, I was like 15, I think, 16, something like that. And I was on a road trip with my mother. My mother and we're from upstate New York, way upstate, closer to Canada than New York City. And we were making a trip to New Jersey to see her brother, my uncle. And it's about an 8-hour trip. And, I'm 15 years old. There's, at this time, this is the 70s. There's no cell phones, nothing. So I'm just bored and, we're playing stupid road games, and whatever else. And, every time we go to New Jersey, to see my uncle, and I was excited because, I got to see all my cousins too. On the way there, about 3/4 of the way there, there's this long tunnel. It's this tunnel that goes through a mountain. And for whatever reason, when I was like 15 or 14, whatever, I thought this was the coolest thing ever, that you could just drill a road through a whole mountain, right? And I remember being very, very excited every time I got to that, ever since I was a little kid. So we've been on the road for about 6 hours, and I know, we're probably getting near the tunnel, and I'm kind of looking out for it. And as we're driving, I noticed that my mother is driving on the road. There's lots of traffic, daylight, and she's driving on the road, but she's kind of looking up at the sky at the same time. And I kind of see that, I noticed that, and she's driving, she's looking up at the sky and driving. And I go, Mom, what are you looking at? And she goes, well, look, you see that? And she points, and she's trying to drive and look at the same time, And I look up, and I see, it's off in the distance. It's like almost like a classic, like 1950s saucer, like from one of those bad B movies. but it's way off in the distance, kind of small, and it's kind of shiny, you know. And we're watching it. It's moving kind of slow, and we're driving, and we're watching that, you know. And I'm super excited. At the time, I was a big fan of In Search of Leonard Nimoy, and I was like, "Ma, I think it's a UFO." She goes, "Well, it could be a UFO." She goes, "But you know, it's not moving very fast." So we're watching this, you know. This goes on for 2 or 3 minutes, right? I mean, there's a few clouds in the sky, but you know, it's still moving. We can still see it. As I'm watching that, I divert my attention back to the road, and I see a sign. The sign says, "Turn your headlights on." Now I'm double excited because I know every time I see those signs that say, "Turn your headlights on," I know we're coming to the tunnel, right? So this is like an epic day for me. So I'm watching this thing in the sky, way off in the sky, and you know, I'm watching the signs, you know, saucer, turn your headlights on, saucer, turn your headlights on, and I'm flipping back and forth, you know, and I'm like, this is awesome, and I'm worried that I'm gonna miss the saucer when we hit the tunnel, right? So this goes on for about another 2 minutes. And, you know, as we're driving, and, you know, I'm like, you know, saucer, turn your headlights on. And then I'm watching the saucer, and then I see it dip behind a cloud. And I'm watching, and then my mother's like trying to watch and trying not to hit other cars on the road, and I'm watching. About 30 seconds go by, and it doesn't come out. I'm like, man, it didn't come out. And I asked her, "Did you see the saucer?" She goes, "No, I don't see it either." It's like, I'm so disappointed. I turn my attention back to the road. There's a sign. It says, "Turn your headlights off." I'm like, what? Sure enough, has another sign. "Turn your headlights off." I'm like, "Mom, what happened to the mountain?" She goes, "What do you mean?" It's like the tunnel. Where'd the tunnel go? At that point, she looks at me, and this look comes over her face, and she looks around, and she sees the signs. She looks up at the sky. Somehow we missed the whole mountain, right? And I'm like, "Well, where'd the mountain go?" She goes, and her face at this point is as white as it goes. She goes, "Maybe there was a detour." And we keep going. The rest of the trip was uneventful. At the time, I didn't know anything about missing time. I don't know if anything happened. I mean, I didn't time the trip. I don't know. It was so long ago, in the 70s. But I've always wondered, to this day, if maybe I'd seen a UFO. You can go ahead and use my name on the thing. Great show. You guys have a great day. Bye.
And man, that is a cool story and scary at the same time.
I don't even know what to say to that.
Either he doesn't know if there was missing time because he just didn't think about it. He was a young man.
Yeah.
He wasn't aware of that kind of stuff, I guess.
You talk about the wheels start turning. When you hear all that, you're like, wait a minute. What happened?
Well, I think the wheels are turning. That's what he's concerned
what just
with.
happened?
Were we abducted, or was it like a time slip?
What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I lean more towards alien abduction because of the sighting of the UFO.
Yeah.
Where if they were just driving and then they didn't go through the tunnel, I'd be like, oh, that sounds like a time slip.
Yeah. But why would it slip? What's weird to me is why would it slip and you not see anything around it? You know what I'm saying? When most time slips, you know they happen because it takes you into an alternate timeline than what you're living on.
So when there's the story of time slips where people are like walking into a store and it turns out it's like a 1960s marketplace, that's like to me like a real time slip. But there are those stories where people claim they have a time slip and in reality it's an abduction.
Yes.
That's you get in this gray area where it's not a time slip, it's missing time. I mean, we even know a guy that didn't see a UFO, but he knew that he drove to a deer lease, took this long every time.
No, fishing.
I'm sorry.
Yep. Went over a certain bridge,
like 4 hours
the whole
difference,
thing.
And him and the guy in the truck don't remember anything that happened.
Yeah. Yeah, they knew when they left, and they knew when they were supposed to get there. They had because they had to follow this timeline. They had a reason to be on this exact schedule.
And the reason we're being secretive is this person doesn't want their identity revealed. But we know this person. We've talked to them, and they've had numerous
more than once. Yeah.
Experiences throughout their life. So very cool. If you have a story you'd like to call in and share with us and the listeners, the number is 888-393-2783. That's 888-393-BRUD. Also, if you want to just write the story and send it to us, you can email us expandedperspectives at yahoo.com.
I've got a surprise. We had talked about it little by little. This is what I'm going to say about it now. There is a new series. It's going to be hitting YouTube ahead here on this channel.
Oh, I forgot.
That I'm going to be doing. I think I'm going to call it Cam's Cryptid Classroom.
Cam's Cryptid Classroom.
The Cryptid Classroom. And I don't know if I'll even
say it's like
Cam's, but Cam's Cryptid Classroom. What I plan on doing is having a weekly show. It won't be very long, but it will be one cryptid per week chosen by me of just really out there, really lesser well-known cryptids that a lot of people don't know. I'll give you the breakdown of when they first got known, their names, where they're from, maybe a couple of sightings, and every week it'll be one of those little primers to where you can learn something to talk to your workmates with, maybe your roommates, maybe your lover, your hugger, your whatever you got going on, the special person in your life, but you want to outdo them. You want to hit them with the Cliff Clavin brain from Cheers where you know something they don't. I'm going to try to give you that information here on a weekly basis. First season, I don't know how long I'm going to run it, but I'm going to try to release it. But I don't know. I haven't picked a day for release yet. Maybe middle of the week. I haven't really figured that part out. But for sure, I'm going to be dropping at least a dozen. At least the first like a 10 or 12 week episodes of our season of it. A season, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
A season of the Cryptid Classroom, and I will pick that up. And you know what? I think I'll do it. I think I'll release one this week. We'll do the first Cryptid Classroom.
Can you release a spoiler? Can you tell us what the first episode will be or no?
Yes, I can, because it's one of my favorite, and we've talked about it. And there's, like I said, I have several. Like I'm going to do with the states. Remember we were talking about going and doing the states.
Oh,
and
that's
things
right.
Like that.
We did a couple of states.
I did a couple of the states.
Yeah.
I'll get back on to doing them more this year. But my first one, I'm going to have to talk about the Snallygaster. The Snallygast, just because it's an awesome name for a cryptid.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll get that, but and we may end up like I may bring this knucklehead in and have him do a little cameo appearance.
Sure, I'll be down with
Oakley
that.
Oakley dokley. Yeah, see, so we're gonna have some fun with that. We've got a lot of stuff coming up. For those of you that don't remember or don't know and forgot, this is what I will be doing. I will be doing more video and photography. This is my new job now. So we will be doing this. I'll be trying to get more going here. I'll be making sure that now I can go with him to do more. So we're gonna do more stuff in the field. We have a few field investigations coming up in the next couple of months that we're going to be involved in, 2 or 3 day camping treks where there's been some interesting things take place. We're going to be videoing and filming and being a part of that whole thing too. So hopefully we're going to start dumping more into the podcast and more into YouTube so you can see a lot more content.
That is awesome. I can't wait. I mean, I'm really looking forward to the Cryptid Classroom.
The Cryptid Classroom.
I bet my son Luke he'll love that.
I will probably get him over here with me to do some. I'll bring him in to do an intro for the Cryptid Classroom.
You got to get him on at least once. He hounds me to this day.
Oh, it's happening then.
Every day. Are you guys doing a live stream? When do I get to come on the live stream? I'm seriously every day.
Yeah, we'll get him.
I feel so bad. I'm like, well, you got to think about like what you want to talk about, because he will talk and talk and talk.
He's great. He's great at it. Yeah, I'm going to get him on. I may have him do my intro.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, I may have him do my whole intro.
All right, folks, so don't forget, if you have a story you want to share with me and Cam and the other listeners, please email the show, expandedperspectives@yahoo.com, or you can call the show, 888-393-2783. Glad to start this year off together with everyone here. Till next time, that's about all the time we have for this show. I'm your host, Kyle Filson. He's your host, Cam Hale.
Peace, y'all.